Well, hello everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Mustard Seed Leadership Podcast. We come to the final installment of the series we've been doing called Raising Up Large Capacity Leaders. We've been looking at 12 factors that determine your leadership capacity and your ability to raise up other big capacity leaders as well. Don't forget, it all comes from Dudley Daniel's book called Biblical Leadership. It's a free download at ncmi.net, and I encourage you to go and download it, read it, study it. This particular series comes out of chapter 6, 7, and 8 of that book, but there's plenty other great chapters about biblical leadership. Let me run through very quickly the 11 we've covered so far. Let me read them to you. If we're going to enlarge our capacity, one, we need a larger theology in order to enlarge our capacity. We need to enlarge our capacity for people that are different to us. We need to enlarge our capacity for people who do things better than we do. Number 4, large capacity leaders are people who can cope with change. Number 5, large capacity leaders are focused. Number 6, large capacity leaders have overcome their fear of failure. Number 7, large capacity leaders prioritize mentoring one-on-one or in small groups. Number 8, large capacity leaders are not afraid to hold people accountable, to confront them and to challenge them. I still get convicted every time I read that. Number 9, large capacity leaders don't try and make everyone think, act, speak, preach, etc. the same way they do. Number 10, large capacity leaders know how to delegate the right things to the right person. And number 11, large capacity leaders match their life to their message. So what's number 12? Let's land with this one. Number 12, large capacity leaders don't try to be a one-man show. Instead, they are genuinely part of a team. And this is such a big one. In some ways, it summarizes all of these, putting them together. But this, for me, is the most critical. In fact, the biggest difference really between a small church and big church, or small organization and big organization, is this: your ability to build team and be part of a team and to grow teams around you. Dudley says it like this: when the lead elder does all the praying and all the preaching, it makes everyone else feel inadequate and insecure, and it stops them from rising up. I've been preaching this as I travel. And do you know what I have found men doing in response? They agree that they have to change things, but they make insignificant adjustments in response. One man had his wife begin to give the announcements, and he thought that he was no longer a one-man show because he did that. The problem was not only that his wife did not know how to give the announcements, but also that this was not a real solution. There was no real change. It's simply not real team ministry when the wife is giving the announcements, but the pastor still does everything else. So there it is. Now, it's the biggest, biggest growth area is learning to think beyond yourself, empowering others, and not just defaulting to do it all yourself. I want to look at 5 things very quickly. What is it? Why are people held back? Why are some people still so intent on being a one-man show in their leadership? Well, number 1, past experience or bad models. Some leaders have only ever experienced one-man type ministries. Maybe you grew up in a church, maybe it was a smaller type denominational church, whatever it might have been, and all you ever saw was one pastor leading, doing everything. So you've inherited that mindset, and so now you're just reproducing that. And that's something you have to realize, recognize, and break that pattern. Number 2 is probably the most common. You're a control freak. Let's just call it what it is. Nobody can do things as well as you can. And so if you want something done, do it yourself. That's become your mantra, and that's become a stronghold. And that's the thing that's now holding back your leadership capacity. You're right. In the beginning, no one else can do it as well as you can. But that mentality is going to hold you back. Only when you begin to release and trust and train and empower, in the beginning, they might not do it as well as you can, but the more people doing, the more people growing, next thing you begin to see your capacity mushrooming as others are doing things. And oftentimes it's the things that you're weak at that others will be strong at. Your weakness might still be better than their inexperience, but if you train them and empower them, soon they'll be doing it way better than you could ever do it. The third one is because people pleasers and you're afraid to ask for help. This is the one that I struggled with most. I didn't want to ask people favors. I didn't want to inconvenience people. So then surely it's just better to do it myself so that I don't have to ask you for a favor. And then the realization struck, I'm not asking a favor, I'm releasing people to do what God has called them to do. God has in fact given them grace to do it. And so the more I'm doing it, I'm robbing them from their opportunity to worship God and to serve God. And so when that mindset was identified and broken, now it feels like most of my job is just connecting different people with different tasks, with their gifting. They grow, we grow, and together the capacity of the church grows. Fourthly, would be poor relational skills. What I mean by that is people who have a low EQ end up offending people and not realizing how they're coming across to people. And so it just becomes, everything becomes an authority clash, or it becomes a relational clash. And so because someone doesn't know how to encourage and show appreciation and empower, they end up just isolated, and so they have to do everything themselves. That's why it's so crucial for leaders that we develop our relational skills, learn to listen, learn to love, learn to empower. It's not about us. Humility focuses on others, and as we do that, we're able to release and empower them as well. And the last one, number 5, is simply impatience. The fastest way to do it is just do it yourself. And that might be true in the beginning, but then you're only thinking short term. If you want to think long term, if you want to go somewhere short, you go by yourself. If you're thinking long term, you want to run as a team, because that's where the strength and that's where the multiplication factor comes from. It takes time to build and develop a team. Impatient leaders who expect instant results refuse to invest the time into equipping the team. So the challenge is, remember Jesus. If anyone could have been the perfect one-man show, it would have been Jesus, but he didn't. He chose to invest. In fact, have a look at what it says in Mark chapter 6, verses 6 to 13. It says, "Then Jesus went around teaching from village to village, calling the 12 to him. He began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over impure spirits. These were his instructions. Take nothing for the journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in your belts. Wear sandals, but not have an extra shirt. Whenever you enter a house, stay there until you leave that town. And if in any place you not welcome you, or they won't listen to you, leave that place and shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them." They went out and preached that people should repent. They drove out many demons and anointed many sick people with oil and healed them. Jesus was developing his team, because that's what big capacity leaders do. So by the time he was crucified and ascended, his team already had experience in terms of ministry and going and how to do it. So let me leave you with a couple of questions as we wrap up this final episode of the series. Number 1, in your leadership journey, have you been part of a dynamic team or only seen one-man shows operating? Think back on your past. Do you know what it's like to be part of a dynamic team? What have you learned, and what are you now reproducing? Question number 2, of the 5 limiting factors mentioned above, which of them might be holding you back and why? Maybe look through them again and try and put your finger. For me, people pleasing. I had to break through that one. Which is the one that might be holding you back? And then number 3, what do you need to start doing radically different to become a true team player and not a one-man show? Now, I remember a distinct day in my life when someone asked me about something that needed to be done, and I was about to say, I will take care of it. And I sneaked, no, could you take care of it? Could you report back to me? See how it goes? And there was a moment in my life when I remember, this thing's got to change. Maybe you need to have one of those moments. What can you do differently, think differently, speak differently to stop doing it yourself and learn to empower the team around you? Well, I hope this helps. I've certainly grown a lot, been challenged a lot, enlarging our capacity so that we can develop other big capacity people around us. Can't wait to see you again next week. We're starting a brand new series. Until then, God bless, and look forward to seeing you then. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Remember, if you'd like the notes that come along with this episode or any one of our past episodes, you can visit outlookchurch.co.za/mustardseed leadership, where you can see all our past episodes, all the resources and notes that go along with this. Until next time, keep growing.